Hello students, welcome to week 2 of language learning through leadership and service. In this first video, we're going to look at traits in a little bit more detail and the trait theory of leadership. And then in the next video, we will look at styles of leadership, and we'll spend quite a bit of time talking about styles of leadership in this week of class. But let's start with the trait theory of leadership and a little bit of review about the trait approach to leadership. Remember, last week we talked about the different theories of leadership, or the different emphases of leadership, and the trait approach is that some people have natural born traits that make them good at leading. And this was one of the earliest approaches to leadership, or the earliest theories of leadership, and it's the idea that there were these great men, usually men in history, that were amazing leaders. And so historians and psychologists and sociologists studied these great leaders and tried to figure out what traits that they all had in common. And there are many different lists of leadership traits, but we're going to talk about 6 of the most common traits that are on most of the lists that historians and sociologists and psychologists created when they studied leadership. Now, as a review again, traits are distinguishing qualities of a person that are usually inherited or someone is born with. They're things that leaders naturally do. And the theory goes along with the saying that leaders are born and not made. In other words, that leadership is a natural thing that is based on your own traits that were passed down from generations, and you're just kind of born with these qualities that could make you a good leader. Or if you're not a good leader, it's because you're not born with these qualities. And there's some good and bad to this theory. It is helpful in finding traits that are important for leadership, and in studying famous leaders from history, it's helpful for that. And we'll talk about these traits that are common among many leaders. But the downside of this theory is that it does not take into account that many leaders develop over time, and that leaders are unique, and they might have a few common traits, but they also have different skills and abilities and traits that are unique to them. So there is some downside to this approach as well. But let's go ahead and look at the specific traits that most leaders have, or most leaders exhibit to some extent. So here are the 6 traits that our book talks about are the kind of top traits that are common among most leaders: sociability, confidence, charisma, determination, intelligence, and integrity. The first one is charisma. Charisma is known as an important trait in leadership, and charisma refers to a leader's special magnetic charm and appeal, which can have a positive effect on the leadership process. Many times when people talk about charisma, they're really talking about how someone looks, and that could include their height, it could include their hairstyle and how they're dressed, and it could include the smile on their face. But charisma is kind of hard to define because it not only includes how someone looks, it also includes how they interact with others, and how they are perceived by a crowd of people, or how they are perceived on TV and things like that. A good example is John F. Kennedy. He was known as being very charismatic. So when he spoke on TV, or when he spoke to a crowd, he just had that natural charm about him that many people were attracted to. Many people will argue that having this trait, having charisma or being charismatic, is helpful to being a great leader. The next trait is confidence. And confidence has to do with feeling positive about oneself and one's ability to succeed. So confidence is believing that you will succeed. And this is helpful in our lives, not only for leadership, but it's helpful to get through any process, to get through a class in school. It's helpful to have confidence and believe in yourself. So confidence is helpful for success in a lot of areas, but it is also one of the markers of leadership. Many leaders share this trait, that they are confident. And here's an image of a boy who's looking off into the sunset with his backpack that's shaped like a jetpack or like an airplane, and he looks like he's confident that he can fly. In this case, that might be not accurate, that he can't fly, but that confidence, that belief in yourself is helpful for leadership. Determination is another important trait for leadership. Determination describes leaders' focus and attentiveness on tasks, and it includes initiative, persistence, and drive. Leaders with this trait are able to assert themselves and persevere in the face of obstacles. So when we think of someone with determination, we think of someone who never gives up. So those twin traits of confidence and determination work well together. Confidence means you believe that you're going to succeed, but then sometimes you fail or sometimes things get hard. And determination helps you to persevere and keep working even when things are hard, even when things aren't going well. So we need both, both in leadership, probably also in just a successful life, to be successful in school or in your workplace. So these are traits that are common to success in general, but they are markers of leadership as well. And as we go through each of these traits, think about, is this something that you're born with, or is this something you can learn? Can you learn to be more confident? Can you learn to have more determination? And we'll talk about it in class. The next trait is integrity. An important trait in leadership is integrity, and it includes honesty, trustworthiness, and consistency. So leaders with this trait follow a strong set of moral principles, and I like to think of integrity as being the same in public as you are by yourself. So this quote is one of my favorite. Integrity is doing the right thing even when no one is watching. So integrity means being honest, being dependable. It means, for example, not cheating. Not only, if you're in class and the teacher's watching you, don't cheat, of course. But also, what if the teacher walks out of the room? Or what if the teacher is not watching? Integrity means being honest even when no one is watching. The next leadership trait is intelligence. So when we look at many famous leaders, they were marked by their intelligence. And this doesn't just mean that they had a high IQ, though it could mean that. It also means having good language skills, having good perception or perceptual skills, and a good reasoning ability or good critical thinking. So this is one of the markers that makes leaders successful. And it also doesn't necessarily mean having a good education, though education is helpful, and most leaders have had good educations, but not all leaders had great education. But it has to do with your perception, your critical thinking, your ability to make good decisions. Intelligence is important for all of that. Sociability is another trait of leaders. Sociability refers to a leader's capacity to establish pleasant social relationships. Leaders with this trait get along well with others. So sociability has to do with having good relationships, having good friendships, but also being friendly and being able to have that kind of charisma and charm that we talked about earlier. That will help with sociability. And some other things to think about. Many good leaders have all these 6 traits that we discussed. It could be argued that many of the traits of these leaders come naturally, and they're things that leaders are born with. However, it's also true that each leader is unique, and each path to leadership is unique. So we might examine leaders and see that one leader has great charisma, and another leader doesn't have much charisma at all, but they might both be good leaders. In most cases, people who want to become good leaders can work hard to develop their skills and strengths and become more effective. So remember that even when we think about leadership traits, these are things that you might naturally be born with. There are also ways to improve yourself, even with these 6 traits that we've discussed. So again, my argument is that any of you can be great leaders. And all of you are leaders in some form or fashion. Okay, in the next video, we'll look at leadership styles, and then we'll discuss in our live class this week about both of these topics.